What's going on, all you amazing, lovely people out there in the world? It is December 12th, 2025. This is the Daily AI Show live. I am hyped up. I am ready to go. I've already told Beth we got some stuff to cover today. So with me is Beth, Andy, and I'm Brian. I think it's just the three of us today. We already asked, and I don't think Karl will make it in. And I know Jyunmi's out today. So it's probably the three of us. And so what I was just telling Beth, Andy, because you were just coming in the door here, is obviously one of the biggest news stories was 5.2. I think let's cover that, why it matters and stuff. But then for all the fine folks out there that are listening, I dug in this morning starting at 6 a.m. So that's about 4 hours of my time. So in the last 4 hours, what I did was I said, okay, all right, let's see. Because if you remember the story now, I built a gem builder, and I talked all about it, and I shared that prompting inside our community. And I said, this is the gem builder to build gems. I tested that a couple weeks ago with 5.1 to dismal results, and I said, okay, we're not there. So naturally this morning I said, okay, OpenAI, I see your fancy little benchmarks here that I do not care about, and I don't really know what they mean. All I want to know is, can you build better custom GPTs? Can you break me free of master and router prompting, which I designed a year ago? And frankly, I feel stuck with. I have felt stuck with. That should be a leader here. I have felt stuck with. That is until today. Because what I was able to do this morning is use the cookbook. We'll talk about the cookbook for 5.2. I dug deep once again into the inner workings of 5.2, and I said, 5.2, can you finally release me from having to have 9 documents of tasks and all this stuff? You seem to be saying something about the same thing we saw with Gemini, which is an overarching goal. And I thought that sounds exciting. I like hearing about overarching goal because that means this model is going to work a little different. And I'm happy to say so far, Jen says she's obsessed with the classes and combo. Very nice. Yeah. Like straight out of, I'm like right off of Andy's farm, straight out of Cali on this. So with 5.2, so I did, and I rebuilt it, and we'll get into all that past the news here, but stay tuned. And look, you should take a moment right now and go join our community, because that is the only way you're going to go ahead and get the full prompting, just like I did for the gem, is to get inside our community. How do you do that, you might ask? Glad you guys asked that. You're going to go to the dailyaishowcommunity.com. That's going to bring you to a Slack page. Beth's got it at the top of the screen. Fantastic. It works. The link is active. Depends on the month on whether that's gone cold on us or not, but the link works right now, and you can go sign up. So that's my quick intro-ish. But let's get into like the news of it. Let's get into 5.2 before I get into more of the show and tell, and I share my screen, and I show you all the good things that I did. What do you guys think? What was your initial reaction? What have you read on X or otherwise about 5.2?
Okay, I'm pretty excited about what they've revealed here. First of all, just overall, they say that it's the first model that performs at or above a human expert level, period. Okay, and there's some major benchmarks out there that attest to that. In the professional knowledge worker context, 5.2 is a really new and exciting agentic kind of assistant. And I confused myself about whether or not it is truly agentic, but I'll read you a quote in a moment that implies to me that it has that capability. Okay, so it beats top industry professionals on 70.9% of comparisons on the GDP Val knowledge work tasks. That's pretty good. But what was really interesting to me is its stated proficiency in the announcements that OpenAI published about GPT 5.2, that it's much, much better at building complex financial analysis spreadsheets, which has been one of the sort of sticky points about AI assistants, is they seem to flub that really badly, making stupid mistakes like just even, making a change to the sheet and not correcting all the relative references in the spreadsheet. Okay. So I have a big project that I've been working on. It's a multi-year financial tax planning model that I'm going to now give to 5.2 and say, hey, fix this, do this, do the full detailed audit of this thing and rebuild it. And my guess is, based on the attestations from financial analysts, people who have been working with GPT 5.2 as sort of the vanguard, is that it's going to be able to do that. And I don't know of any other model that can.
So one of the things that Matt Schumer talked about in terms of 5.2, Matt Schumer's hyper right. I think we've talked about him a bunch. He's somebody who has like a solid app that he built, and then he just researches the crap out of stuff and posts his ideas, right? So it's wonderful.
He built the first computer use
potentially
that I ever used was from
that's true.
Hyperwrite. Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
and it's Schumer, Schumer, if you want to find him. He put out some analysis of his own experience. He's one of the early, right? He's had it since November. So he said it's amazing, but with a caveat that Thinking Pro can sometimes think for an hour and then time out. Sometimes it thinks for an hour and it accomplishes amazing things, right? So there's a little bit of that, and I think we're just gonna, like, that's how much are you willing to how much is that worth the cost, right? Like, cost not in terms of money now at this point. I think the cost has been justified. If you can afford the 200 Pro, you should get it, right?
Well, the API costs are 40% higher though for 5.2 over 5.1.
That's true. That's absolutely true. For that, for whatever the medium level is, right? So the other piece of this is time and attention cost. Like, are you willing, if it times out and doesn't give you what you want after an hour, 20% of the time, like, or 10% of the time, that for me gets to be the, do I want a slightly less great answer, but I'm going to know that it's working in 5 minutes kind of thing. But very exciting.
Yeah, so the Conundrum episode that I have coming out tomorrow, I'd just been ranting and raving about this yesterday with Perplexity, that I felt like Perplexity's deep research was giving me half what answers comparatively to everything else. I use it literally every week for the Conundrum episode. So last night, I only had access to the API side of 5.2, which is good because I was like, yeah, Beth, let's throw 5.2 Pro at the research end of the Conundrum. And boy, are you right in terms of it. It didn't time out inside the playground, but it took a while. I'm not quite sure how long, but it was minutes. The Conundrum episode that I'll release tomorrow is based off of 5.2. I decided to put that out there. It actually produced because of the depth of the research, and then because there's a long, short, or medium, or whatever it is inside a Notebook LM now. The episode tomorrow, without me talking at the front of it, is 30 minutes long, which is now by far the longest. And I want to be careful about that. About Conundrum episodes were always meant to be a little bit on the shorter side. And well, we don't need to recreate our hour-long show here on a Saturday.
Which but I decided to put it out there. To be on the shorter side originally.
Yes. Yeah, well, all of it was, right? But I decided I'm going to put it out because, number one, the 30 minutes is good. And I'll just give you guys a quick taste of tomorrow's Conundrum, by the way, which Gemini helped me come up with an idea for. I was like, I just felt like I was like, I've been doing this for, 81 newsletters. Plus I was doing Conundrums before that. I was just, come up with a new Conundrum, right? And it was a good one. It was like what you'll hear the story about tomorrow on the show. It'll come out at 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow on the podcast platforms, not on YouTube, but on the podcast platforms because it's audio only, is if aliens, for lack of ETIs is what it says, but aliens came to visit Earth for all of human history, the assumption is, well, you would send some human to be the greeter to these aliens, right? But we actually have another option now. We could send AI. And there's a lot of pros and cons of why you may or may not want to do that. And it gets into the fun sci-fi side of why humans with all their messy, messy emotions who might say the wrong thing could lead to annihilation, to why AI might be seen as a tool by more advanced civilization, more advanced, whatever earthling, non-earthlings. And it gets into that, and it does a really fun job of using scientific research of the things we know, but it's also sort of a sci-fi, I almost said sci-fi AI, sci-fi. Well, it's not your guys' show. So the sci-fi side of it or whatever. So I highly recommend going and checking out that show tomorrow. If you've never checked out one of the Conundrum episodes, this is what it's all about. It's like, come up with an idea, do the fun research. In this particular case, I use 5.2 Pro. So we'll see what people think in terms of the depth and the quality of the research. And of course, Google Notebook LM isn't so much responsible for the quality. Google Notebook LM is responsible for the quality of the two voices that are discussing it and how they go back and forth. And of course, the whole joke of the whole thing is every week you're hearing AI discuss why AI may ruin us or save us. And you're hearing AI tell you that very, very convincingly as if it was humans itself. So there's a lot of layers in that you have to pull through. But anyway, that was my experience with 5.2 Pro and only experience. But man, Beth, I was with you. I was like, is this going to time out? Is this not going to produce a result? And it ultimately did. But it had me wondering for sure. So if I was using that, I would be concerned if that's something that's happening.
Yeah, it just seems like something eyes wide open go into. The other, I was actually still Matt Schumer. He made a post and he was like, okay, so this seems like a new rule. The rule is that you're going to have an equivalent model and the price is going to come down within a year to orders of magnitude less expensive, right? And the example that they're doing with that is how much it costs to pass the ARC prize the first time, right? And those were thousands of dollars for answers, and this was like $11 for an answer, like significant.
Yeah, that is significant. Well, one of the things that 5.2 came out with, just actually Gemini didn't come out with a cookbook, but OpenAI is very good about releasing cookbooks. And so I'll show that here in a second. It's cookbook.openai.com, but the title is GPT 5.2 Prompting Guide, which is really what it is. And these are very important documents. Anytime these new models come out, you've got to go look at the cookbooks because it's going to go beyond what you see in the nice, pretty, well done, blogs that are about benchmarks and stuff. Although, to your point, Andy, I did see the examples they gave about the before and after Excel spreadsheets, and it's night and day as compared to what it was capable of producing. And then Karl said the same thing in our internal Slack channel last night. He's like, there is a noticeable improvement on the spreadsheet. I personally have not tested that. I just don't have a use case to throw at it right away. But I might, because I always do line item budgeting for my family, always have for years now. And so literally every expense that moves through the family, revenue and expenses, I've accounted for over the years. It's the only way I really know how to do budgeting. And so I am excited now about throwing some of that data at 5.2 to see if it can come up with new novel answers about how, adjusting for inflation and other things, how our food costs have adjusted from 2017 to 2025, something like that. And I think that'd be really interesting for my family to see. Are we truly spending more on food, or is it just because food prices have risen? And that would be nice. That would be nice to know if that was the case or not.
So there are a couple other news stories that I brought. One of them is that Topaz, which is the creator of the creator of Gigapixel and all of those things that upgraded the quality of lower quality data, right? Lower quality images, lower quality visuals, lower quality media, film. And they just received an Emmy Award for that. They were awarded Let me grab it. They received the Emmy Award for Image and Video Technology because of their enhancement for high-quality TV catalog restoration, which is actually pretty cool, right? They are used by over 3 million customers worldwide, spanning creative professionals to Fortune 500 companies. But as we saw early on with Topaz, that what they were doing was you could put in like the old photograph that you had from like your great great grandparents or something, and be able to take that fuzzy black and white and actually create some details in it. And there are other detail imaginers, right? That's basically what they're doing, is they're looking at and saying, what would it look like if it were slightly more detailed? There were other ones that came out that started to introduce like weird artifacts, and Topaz really has been state of the art. So that was super exciting. Andy, did you bring another news story?
I do have a couple little things here. But let me just understand this. Are we going to move ultimately to a segment? You're going to lead Brian on the 5.2 cookbook. Is that what's next?
I will share that. I will share the new GPT with 5.2 meta builder prompting. Great. And then I'll also show
so we've got plenty to talk about there. So let me just knock out a couple of small things that I think are interesting. So we've talked about brain-computer interfaces. Neuralink is the Elon Musk company that's doing that with a full-scale implant. There's a new one that is called Science Corp, and it's secured $260 million to commercialize Prima, which is simply a grain-sized retinal implant. So it goes into the retina, and it works with camera glasses and a compact battery, so patients with severe vision loss can see again with reading clarity. So this is an example of using BCI and AI to solve a narrower question than full brain-computer interface, right? Not trying to, strap a thing around your head so that you can think thoughts and have that be, an extension of your self out there in the AI world, but rather solving a serious problem right now with what is in effect a brain-computer interface technology, but just applying it to the retina to regain sight for people who have lost their retina. That's amazing.
That is amazing.
And it's huge. It's actually like an amazing treatment for macular degeneration, which was what I read in the thing. And there isn't treatment that gives you back your sight. Like this is the thing that could potentially do that.
It's a sentence, basically. If you have macular degeneration, you're going to lose your sight. Well, now there's a solution for it.
Yeah.
And it's a technological solution. Yeah.
My mother-in-law deals with that. It came out of COVID, believe it or not. But it's bad enough that she can't drive anymore.
Yeah.
And she's only in her 70s. She's still young, but just one of those things. And my mother-in-law is still capable of fully getting around and stuff. I think even just watching TV is problematic, So I'm not sure. I haven't heard that it's necessarily getting worse in her case, but just the idea that she might be able to restore some of her vision capability through some technology, some AI like this is honestly amazing. So that's really, really exciting.
Yeah. So I have one other quick little one, and then we can go on back to 5.2, which is big.
I have a small quick one.
All right.
Okay, good. Okay. So let me knock mine out, and then I'll back off. This is about reasoning in models that's demonstrated in their competence on AI math competitions. And one of the things that 5.2 did very, very well, which Gemini also aces, is one of the math, benchmarks. So it's like the high school math test, basically. And just before 5.2, 5.1 only got a 94 on that one. And now it gets 100%. It can knock that out. And Google Gemini can knock it out too. It also scores 100% on that. But here's an interesting little company, New Research, Nous, Nous, right? New in French. New Research open sourced a model called Nomos 1. It's a 30 billion parameter model that scored 87 out of 120 on the 2025 Putnam contest, which is, another math Olympiad kind of test. So in doing so, among open source models, it crushed Qwen 3. And this is one of the most prestigious collegiate math competitions. So not high school math. This is collegiate math. The system is different. And remember, this is a 30 billion parameter model, not a trillion parameter model out there, like the main players like Gemini and OpenAI's 5.2. The system uses a two-phase approach. It's generating a worker to solve and self-critique its own responses, and then it uses it's multiple workers, it's like a multi-workers delegation system. And then it uses a tournament-style bracket elimination to elevate the best submissions from all of those workers. And so Nomos score would place it second among nearly 4,000 human competitors last year. That's how good it is in a 30 billion parameter model. That can run on your local device, basically, like on a computer easily. Probably on a really well-built, smartphone in the future. So, and then they released and open sourced the system, that orchestration system that they built. And then they ran Qwen 3, one of the other leading open source models, through that process. And Qwen 3 only got 24 compared to their 87. So what that tells you is that this system that New Research built is doing something beyond just that orchestration trick, right? Mm-hmm. It has actually some capabilities that Qwen 3 doesn't, even when Qwen 3 uses their technique.
That's very cool. And also really clear to understand. Totally appreciate that.
All I was going to ask on that little caveat is not caveat, but little addition there before you do your story, Beth, is Andy, I just want to know, we know you told us that you're in the process of upgrading your Mac. So have any of these stories coming out swayed you into, I don't know much about Macs, but have perhaps swayed you into a higher category new Mac? That's what I want to know.
But no, because I had already maxed out the MacBook Pro. Okay. So, I'm going. I point out that the systems that I use now, I've nursed along for 9 years.
Right.
They're really good. I mean, I buy at the top end of what Mac puts out. And so this is a really fabulous system, but it's an Intel one. It's noisy, hot, etc. The MacBook Pro is going to be a different class of system now.
No doubt.
The M chips changed so much, and including so much of what you're able to do with Mac specific apps, right? Like if you try to run it on an Intel thing, it's like, oh no, sorry. Okay, my news is that Sam Altman casually just dropped a little X post after saying things about their birthday because OpenAI turned 10 yesterday. And then hey, really happy to be working with Disney. Also, we have a few little Christmas presents for you next week. So, Shipmas. It sounds small Shipmas. Maybe not 12 Shipmas, but yeah. And for people who are just listening to this, I am saying ship with a P. Ship must.
That's right.
There we go.
Don't come at us. Don't take away our monetization
This is not
abilities. These shows are still, although I do think I probably cursed a little bit yesterday, so I probably hurt us a little bit yesterday. But well, you mentioned Disney, and that was going to be my smallest story. Karl already covered this because it came out yesterday, but I had not read anything. I was literally learning about it live on the show, which was super fun. And I was like, what is going on with this story? I was just trying to wrap my head around it. And Honestly, I don't know that I have a lot more to do. I read the articles and stuff like that, and it definitely feels like this in kind type of thing. Like they've made this agreement, and $1 billion went this way, but then it's also being sent back this way, and you're like, I don't know, we're just kind of netting out again. Once again, it's like one of these like we're just moving the money around, like they're the three cups game. It's like I'm not really sure anything is actually happening or whatever. It's just on paper, but yeah, it was, they dug a lot into the safety aspect of it because I was like, how are you going to pull that off? And then I was curious about the Disney Plus side of it. Wasn't a whole lot extra there other than it said some curated, selected. I don't know if you ultimately are just opting into that on Sora clips or Sora, videos would show up on Disney Plus. And so I was like, is that just a like best of the week type of thing where somebody somewhere, some algorithm is, bringing in fan fiction or something to do with, whatever Star Wars or the other ones. Also, I assumed not that the voices were not part of this, and they're not. So I did see that part of it because I was like curious about that. So yeah, just a lot. I had a lot of curiosity about like this deal. I was like, I'm not against it. I think this is a really savvy idea from Disney. I will say, from a personal standpoint, I'm not shocked by this. I've mentioned my friends who work at Pixar many times on this show, and dear friends of mine, the guy I grew up with since I was like 9. And I bet you they have an opinion on this. And, not surprisingly, not a super fan of this. You could see how this could be construed as taking, food out of the mouths of animators and things like this. So more to come, I guess, on this. I'm just more or less curious. I'm just super curious about how this is going to roll out. Obviously, Disney's no dummy. They obviously think there's some really good value to fan created videos, but how they display them on Disney Plus, all the things. I don't know. It's just like like I said, it's kind of a mini news story because I don't have much. Like I don't have some breaking news thing. It was just like I read into this yesterday and I was like, this is new. This is a new thing. This is, what I mean? Like maybe it's one of many dominoes to fall. Maybe all major studios will do something like this. The fact that Disney is the first and all the IP that they own. I mean, we just saw what happened with Netflix buying Warner Brothers. Think about all that IP, Harry Potter, all those kind of things. But also the voices aren't there. So if I'm going to make like a fan fiction and it's me and and Darth Vader, but I can't make Darth Vader sound like Darth Vader, what am I doing in that video? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Maybe Beth, I don't know, as a creator, how do you see this? Like, have you thought about like, oh, if I went on to Sora, I might do this, or this with those characters?
I've thought about it a little bit, but I think what you're talking about is really important because these are characters that we know so incredibly well, right? It's the same thing with the like uncanny valley for the faces. We know these characters well. You can't do a Darth Vader thing with like a 80% Darth Vader voice. And right. I am a huge fan of the get it to celebrity lookalike and then stop. Yeah. Because I think it's important to be able to like allow people to recognize the difference. What I did think was interesting and was not in the main stories that I read, but when they announced this, they delivered a cease and desist to Google.
That's what Cisco's saying, yeah, in the comments.
Yep. And the likeness, so it includes characters, but not likeness and talent, maybe, so not human. And so Darth Vader,
you're right.
Darth Vader is interesting. Right? Like,
yeah, because it does appear to be that it would be animation for him, not. I got that impression only because they talked about the Marvel characters, and so like Black Panther would be a cartoon version of Black Panther, is the way I read it. I might be wrong about that, but in other words, I don't believe on Sora I could create, what were they calling them, cameos, where it's me and Black Panther
Right.
And it looks like I'm literally standing next to the character, like on set or
The
something
actor.
like that.
Yeah.
So I saw like snippets, and it was like Stitch from Lilo and Stitch on the front of somebody surfing, but it was cartoon Stitch on the front of and I'm not, look, that's great too, but like that's different. And that's why I was like,
yeah, that's Roger Rabbit mixed reality.
yes,
right?
yes.
The other piece that I'm just now remembering, did we do a story where the Darth Vader voice was made as an AI and sold, so that future, right? James Earl
Yes.
Jones wasn't able to do the new something,
Yeah.
and so they made his voice. Maybe that's part of the IP, but for other human voices that are not Darth Vader, that might be a very special circumstance.
I believe you're right. James Earl Jones's estate approved the AIification of his voice, and Disney does use that. I'm sure they pay to do so. But I do remember seeing that, because you're right. James Earl Jones had either passed or was not capable of doing whatever the last thing is, whatever last Disney movie where they needed a cameo of Darth Vader, or maybe it was The Mandalorian or something like that.
Terribly sorry, we don't have Jyunmi or Karl in the cast today. So.
I mean, I love the shows, but I'll be damned if I can keep them all separate in my mind. It's just like all of Star Wars to me blends all together from the last 15 years. And I mean, I do love the movies. My wife does too, but I couldn't tell you how any of them connect. I just enjoy them as a fan, and I walk away, and that's about as far as I go with it. So anyway, more to come on that, but man, is that fascinating. That's just a fascinating partnership. I just can't wait to see how that goes, or doesn't go, or does it become contentious like OpenAI and Microsoft? I don't know. I don't know where that's going to go, but I thought that was like 5.2 is really fascinating to me, but that whole Disney OpenAI thing was a bomb yesterday. I don't know.
Yeah. This is like thrice divorced, maybe, if we count Elon. Now we're like, okay, third partner, third spouse.
Yeah, well, right. Yeah. 10 years, they're not doing too bad, right? They've moved through 3 people. They did put out a little video yesterday that was sort of we started in small rooms, and then one person had an idea about, or noticed something with, basically text prompting. And they were talking about how the last 3 years of that 10-year existence of OpenAI has been second to none. And of course, we've all lived through that. So that is very interesting to see. One thing real quick before I get into this quick demo here is I did just test image creation using 5.2 thinking along with selecting image, because that's how you would do it in Gemini. If you want to get the best, to me at least, when I'm creating the comics that go in the newsletter on Sunday, I was laughing with Beth and saying, I like my comic idea for this week. But here's the thing, I'm able to give really sort of a complex prompt that would have totally messed up image creation, where the thinking is done ahead of time. There's obviously a plan put in place by Gemini. And then once it comes up with what it actually has to do, then it goes about doing the image. But the thing is, it does it really quickly. It's still light years faster. So I did just do this with 5.2 because I was curious if there was any improvements in imaging. We had heard that there was like some, testing out there for chestnut, or I can't remember what the other word was, but there were all food words, and we were joking about that. And I thought, oh, did 5.2 get any better at images? Well, here's what I can say. It did consume the massive prompt that had multiple, each slide, each square of a 6 square comic panel, each 6 panel comic had its own rules and quotes and word bubbles that had a face. It was complex. It took it in, and it did create an image, albeit no faster than we've seen images created in the past from 5.1. But it did not do it reliably. Some of the text was wrong. Some of the word bubbles, and this has been the main thing for the comics, is the word bubbles face the wrong mouths. It doesn't understand that. Gemini gets it right every single time. So not really what I was going to do a demo about, but while you guys were talking, I was like, oh, geez, I didn't even think to check to see if the imaging got better from 5.2. I tested one thing. That's certainly not enough to really know, but I did not see an improvement there. So perhaps there's still another imaging model that's coming, Chestnut, whatever, and it'll be a Nano Banana Pro competitor.
Yeah, but what I've seen about Chestnut and that kind of stuff is it's like makes selfies that look more like selfies, right?
Yeah.
Speech bubble is like, I'm not sure that there are models that are going after that. I find that very sad, but everybody seems to be more like, can we make it look like people took a selfie in 1973? Oh, cool.
Yeah. I mean,
so
cool.
on the vision side, 5.2 didn't attempt to claim any major advances in terms of image or video generation. It's not doing that, but they did claim that it's much improved when it comes to reading charts, for example, images in PDFs, for example, in the context of professional analysis and presentation preparation. It's going to be much better for that kind of imagery, not generating, artistic images.
But
that's good, because I have a good test for that. So I'll test that later today, Andy. Thanks for reminding me of that.
There has been buzz about Chestnut, which is why we know it's called Chestnut potentially. But maybe that's part of what happens next week. And I am hesitant to say it because if you were watching us last year, I spent the whole time saying, Dolly, come on, give us a new Dolly. And there was no new Dolly.
No
it
new
was
Dolly.
Very sad. So maybe, but I'm not.
What time of year do you talk about chestnuts? Chestnuts roasting on an open fire? Sounds kind of like Christmas to me. I say, I'll put it out there, Beth, we're gonna get it during their smaller shipmas this year. All right, so let's bring this up on the screen. I won't take too long with this. But this is what I worked on literally this morning. I literally put aside all other things I was working on because you all know I create lots of custom GPTs, and I've been creating a lot of gems. And boy, do I really love Gemini and gems right now. But I was really hoping OpenAI could see the light and get a little bit closer, because I thought, man, I do build a lot of custom GPTs for clients too. And I would love to be able to do both. I don't want to pick. I want to do whatever the client wants the most. And certain clients want one or the other, unless they want Copilot. And then I say, no, thank you. That's not true. I build Copilots too, but they're just not as good. So what are we looking at? Well, this is the prompting guide, which you can get to by going to cookbook.openai.com or probably just typing in GPT 5.2 prompting guide. And you're going to get this little introduction here. Which is nice. Look at that. They even give it to you as Markdown. I gave it as the URL, but actually that would have been nicer to just grab the whole Markdown file and throw that in. Not that it had an issue with it. So you get into the key behavioral differences between 5 and 1 versus 5.2. Generally lower verbosity, more concise and task focused, though still prompt sensitive, and preference needs to be articulated in the prompt. Stronger instruction adherence. Well, that's bingo. That's what I want to know about. Tool efficiency. Okay, didn't really talk about that. Conservative grounding bias tends to favor correctness and explicit reasoning. Ambiguity handling improves with clarification prompts. So then we get into prompting patterns here, and we've got about different things: scope drift, long context, and recall. You can see here where it's actually telling, it's saying, like, in the background essentially of the prompt, first produce a short internal outline, restate the user's constraints explicitly in your answer, anchor claims to sections, and then it's like gives it in like if this and that type of deal on it. So hallucinations, on and on, right? Okay. So this is really, really helpful. And I always say, like, if you're going to build anything with 5.2 now, you owe it to yourself to read through this document and have a general understanding of what has changed. And there were some changes from 5.1, from 5 that were meaningful, like M dashes and things like that, but not a really big jump. And so there seems to be, to me at least, a bigger jump from 5.1 to 5.2, which is a nice thing to see. So, like last time, the first thing I always do is say, well, I need to build a tool to build more tools faster. So that's what I went about doing. I used both this documentation. I used my Gemini builder prompt, master prompt, right? Because that already existed. So I was like, hey, that XML may actually be helpful. And between the two of them and a little bit of the back and forth, I created the new 5.2 Meta GPT builder. And I just said in beta here because I do think it probably needs a little bit more testing, and I wanted people to at least be aware of that. And if we just expand this, once again, you guys can see that this, as all things go, is a very short prompt, considering all things considered, right? We might also look at this and say 2 years ago, we would have never done this. This is way too confusing for a model. But we've already seen that Gemini Pro loves this. So my theory was, will 5.2 love it as well? Now, this is not written in the same way that the Gemini one was, which tends to really like the XML tags. As a matter of fact, look at this. There's no hashtags. There's actually really no markdown in here at all. What you have is just it chose to do bolded headers, like H1, H2 headers. There, other than our dashes and our 1, 2, 3s, look how clean this is. This is much, much different. And I feel qualified to talk about this. I know, the Allocate Millers and the people out there.
Saw a couple of hashtags there, though. What was that? You scroll up a little bit. There were a couple of hashtags.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Under phase 4, it did use the double hashtag, which would be to say subset this under phase 4. But interestingly, it did not put a hashtag there, which is what I would have done. Yeah, I would have done that. Now, why it decided to use bold, but I mean, I've built with this now and it does work. So there is prompt adherence to this. We can say that. Oops, sorry, didn't mean to hit the mic there. Okay, so this is what I built and this is what I will share. Don't worry, I will put that in the community, this entire prompt to it. So now let's look at an example of using this prompt to build this GPT builder to build more GPTs, right? That's the whole point of it. Notice, by the way, there's no knowledge documents or anything like that. I do have this on, it's 5.1, it should be 5.2 thinking. That's what I meant to grab. So let's update that really quick. That's what it was, but I just made an update to this. So let's just, before I forget, because 5.1 will not work. All right, so there's that. So 5.2 thinking, I kept all the capabilities on. Obviously, we have no other actions on it to it. So now here we are. We're using the meta builder. You can see that up in the upper left here. And I said, I'm ready to begin, which is typically my wake word. I've used that all the time. There is a button on it, which is just, to me, the easiest way to do it. But I will tell you this, you no longer explicitly have to prompt for I'm ready to begin. That used to be a given in 4.0 or whatever. You had to be very clear about what happens next. Mm-hmm. Now, the prompting is kind of like, I mean, if you give me a wake word, I'm going to give you this, which is what we want in this case, which is phase 1 discovery. What's the name? What's the prefix? What's the primary user, the primary objective? What does great look like? One didn't say lock phase 1. It is funny about using these words. It's come back to me in some instances and I've been like, continue. And it's like, please say lock phase 1 if you would like to move on. I was like, well, okay. So I don't mind that. I like things to be a little structured like that. Now, what are you looking at here in these files? Well, I had already built. This is a out there being used in the wild new client research and prep GPT that scale clients use all the time. In fact, they pay for it. And you can see these are the previous files that I had to do. You can see our master and our router and all of our tasks in these individual documents, and as well as the security policy. This is how, up until literally this morning, I've been building all GPTs because it was the only way I could reliably get great results. And I basically said, hey, I want you to look at these. I do not want to do master and router because you have a new way of doing this. Here's my prefix. I want, scaled NCRP, right? Because I do like to make sure I have good naming conventions, although it's not as important now if there's not 19 different documents, but regardless, here's my prime objective and here's what great looks like. But to be fair, in this case, I could say short here because a lot of content is in these files, right? So it came back to me and it said, okay, and you can see it here. Make sure you say lock phase 1 if you're happy with what we have here. And this is phase 1 locked. Great. Moving on to phase 2. So we're going to define exactly how sales pros are going to interact with this. And you can see it gives me a whole bunch of sort of like, it would be awesome if I could actually check on them. And it's giving me all these questions. Must do, must not do, truth sources, when ready, say lock to. And you can see here, Inputs, I answered the question. Outputs, agreed. 3, I agree. 4, agree, but I also said no M dashes because I did see that was still happening in another GPT build. Or typical AI speaker results. 5, I agreed with truth sources. I said, yep, it's both, which is option 3 up here. And then I said lock phase 2 because I knew it was going to ask me to do that. And it says, okay, so now we're moving on. Here's the mandatory inputs. Now we're into phase 3, which is the workflow design. Do I want this to be single shot or a guided multi-step? Well, if this was just me using it, I would say single shot because it's user. It needs to have a great user interface. I said multi-step because I wanted to work with the user. So proceed with single shot, proceed with guided. I said B because it sounds like a nicer user experience. Lock phase 3. And now we're getting phase 3. So then we get into the drafting. Now, for those that were watching this, for the Gemini build, you'll notice that one of the things I thought was amazing about the Gemini build was red teaming. And so I built that into this GPT builder as well. And it's actually potentially better than the Gemini version of it, which is sort of cool. So it'll give me the draft of the prompt. And it was doing this starter user message. I had to go back and explain to it that there was no starter box, that there's only one single master prompt. And so we got this cleared up, but there's no starter user message. It's just the user prompt because this isn't being built inside the playground and it seemed to be getting a little confused there. So then we get everything we know, known failure modes. And I was like, would you like me to run the stress test now? Now, if I said yes, it would have just made up reasonable information to stress test. In this particular case, I gave it a knowledge document that I had. And I said, yeah, let's go ahead and look into Viking automatic sprinklers. Here's the website. Here's the job title. So this is all stress testing here. This is it just running through. And I was like, nope, you know what? Now that I've read the red teaming here, what had happened in this particular case is it was my fault, by the way. I should have been more specific about I need all the research and then I need the one pager. And what it did was did all the research, held it in the background, and just gave me the one pager. In this particular user experience, you would want both, right? The sales rep is going to want both. So it reworked that out. There's a whole lot of like, this is sort of the stress test here. You're looking at all that stuff. And I said, proceed. Then it said, okay, here's what I'm going to do as far as the updates to the prompting. Here are the different things. I've tightened this. I've added this. I've updated this. By the way, when I built this, I built 3 other GPTs using this morning for a client. And in all cases, it ran the stress tests, came back to me after running 5 different variations of a stress test all at once. So I didn't touch anything. It just did it. Unlike this one where I gave it a specific company and all that. And then it came back and said, here are the suggested improvements to the prompting. So think how cool that is. It gave you the prompting, then ran the stress test and said, here's what I uncovered and here's what I think we should make even better. Great. Let's do that, right? So then if you get down to the bottom here, we once again get the final prompt. And if you were to look at the final result of this, new client research and prep, and we said, I'm ready to begin, you're going to see, basically it's going to ask me for the right information here. To get started, here, I need all 4 requirements. Optional, not, don't need to have it. But if you have it, it's great. We'll say it's the sprinkler system. Oh, you know what? Let's say it's the sprinkler system. And let's see if I do this. There we go. We'll add in the same knowledge document to it, and we'll give it to it again. Because it would need to know that. And let's just see what it comes back to. It should ask me first if in fact I gave it everything. I still need 2 remaining requirements: your company, your product or service description. Also, I received your internal document. So I'm going to say here, well, I work for Coro in this particular case. And 2, that would be the knowledge doc you now have. Okay, so let's see if that makes it happy. And for this one, I'm actually going to say, no, we'll keep it short. Quick question. Let's see. First meeting with the HR director or follow-up qualification. I'm just going to say A. It's going to be a first meeting here with a new client. And then what you're going to see is that it's going to do a lot of research on Viking. It's going to go section by section here. Now, again, you guys saw how long the prompt is, but this is the big difference. Every one of these sections would have had to have been a page worth of detailed prompting to get this. And I can tell you, because I've seen the old version and this version is superior with 1/10 of the prompting. So what does that tell you? It's like Gemini, right? Where the models are now able to reason at a higher level. They do not need the word for word descriptions of how to stay in the box. It just needs a general overview of what is the goal here. What are we going after? And then you're leaning on the model to say less so that the model can do what it does best and go out and do the required amount of research and work. So you can see here, it's going to keep going. I mean, this is like, look, think about this. You just started your rep and you got handed off a brand new client. And they're like, hey, we're working with this person now. You're like, great. You have a meeting with them this afternoon. You're like, with who? The HR director. Like, I don't know anything about this client. Boom, throw it into this GPT.
Yeah.
And away you go, right?
And what you're talking about is also why the fact that it's 40% more expensive is not a big deal, right? You're prompting less, you're sending less information back and forth. So it should come out as a win.
And then you're getting your one pager, which is what it initially had given me. So look, I built 4 this morning. I haven't built 400, obviously, so I cannot, attest for, all the things, but I know what good looks like. I know what great looks like with custom GPTs. I've been around the block enough times with these to tell you that this is different. And anybody that says otherwise isn't paying attention to how 5.2 has been generated different. It is very similar to the way that Gemini 3 was different than 2.5. So call that what you will. I'm not claiming who knew what, when, or otherwise. But from my perspective, it feels like OpenAI took a page out of the Gemini book and said, oh, there's a different way to get these models to interact with the reasoning layers. And we all saw how 5 kind of sort of struggled with its own internal router logic. It was like when they tried to do the one to rule them all, it didn't quite work. And now what you're seeing is much better reasoning and logic at the top level, which means I can give it a lot less prompting. And now my prompting is focused on not the minutia, not the do this. And if I say this and the user does that, it's very hands off. This is what the end should look like. You're going to get these inputs. These are the outputs. And this is what great looks like. And so going back just to finish this up, it's very much, Andy, what you had been telling us about when you were working in Lovable and all the other ones about a project requirement document, a PRD. This to me is the 1-2 punch is get your PRD right in your head, use ChatGPT, do whatever you got to do, get clear, then go use a builder like this that can take those instructions and go, I understand what we're trying to achieve and accomplish. Let me build you the prompt that does that for you. So that's what I got.
Hey, so beautiful, beautiful demo. I want to kind of wrap it by saying what we're experiencing with these new models, Gemini 3 and 5.2, is more agentic steerability, meaning we can put in a higher level objective prompt and either ask it to create a full scaffolding for how to approach that kind of prompt and then use that prompt in its own sort of recursive interest. And that makes it possible for you to assign an objective and have the model plan out and execute a multi-step process, which is what you just did there with a very, very spare prompt.
Yes.
And so now here, I'm circling back to this quote that's about the agentic quality of 5.2. And there is, by the way, a section 5 in the cookbook about helping you prompt in such a way that you get reports back from these agentic multi-step executions. And so I think they're saying agentic, and I'm not going to try to argue that this is an agent, but it is behaving in agentic ways. Okay. Right. Here's the quote that I wanted to share about that. This is from a company called Triple Whale that got early access to 5.2 and implemented it. Triple Whale is a marketing program builder, essential tools for tracking all the metrics of your marketing programs and everything else. And they provide AI powered tools to provide this service to enterprises. And here's the quote from the guy who was working with 5.2. GPT 5.2 unlocked a complete architecture shift for our system. We collapsed a fragile multi-agent system into a single meta agent with 20 plus tools. The best part is it just works. The mega agent is faster, smarter, and 100 times easier to maintain. We're seeing dramatically lower latency, much stronger tool calling, and we no longer need sprawling system prompts because 5.2 will execute cleanly off a simple one-line prompt. It feels like magic.
I have to say, now I would say it feels like magic had I not seen Gemini before this, because Gemini felt like magic. I kept going back to the Gemini. I told you guys that. And I go, there's no way this mega prompt is going to work. I was so dismissive of it until it proved me wrong. And then I was like, happy to be there, and I'd be like, holy crap. Because I'd said, like, Beth and I, and we've all been on this show since the beginning, but, Beth and I were teaching this stuff less than 3 years ago. And it just flies in the face of what we would have said back then. And that delights me to no end, that I get to work in AI that routinely proves Brian from 6 months ago to be irrelevant or no longer, you know what I mean? Like, and I love that about it. I love that it keeps me on my toes and that the answer is always like, well, let's see what this new model can do. And so, look, what did this really do? It created a whole lot more work for me, because now, of course, I want to go back and recreate all the GPTs. But the beauty of that is you guys saw like how I was able to give it the old documents and say, don't get swayed by the master prompt thing. Just get the concept, get the feeling of what I was trying to do here, then go do your own thing. And that's exactly what I did. So the reality is, to recreate one of my old GPTs in this new version is like less than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's insane.
I think that what they're saying when they say this is agentic and you're like, please give me the code words, is an example for this too. I think that we are moving into a place where agentic means pseudocode, right? We've seen lots of people say the hottest programming language now is English, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever language you speak. But natural language discussion back and forth still had a bunch of sort of preferences for feeling like a chat communication. And I feel like they're shifting now with agentic. We're writing programs. We don't have to know the code. We don't have to like create a code language to do this. We're just calibrating with the AI. When I say this, these are the things that I want you to do. And it's functioning like code, which is why it said continue isn't good enough for me right now, Brian. Please give me the trigger word and I would be happy to produce for you.
Yeah. I love that. I love, this is a great description of what's going on. All right. Well, this makes me happy because, man, I just felt like OpenAI wasn't going to get there. I was definitely concerned about 5.2, but at least coming out of this morning, I'm feeling really good about OpenAI hearing the call and releasing something that just doesn't feel like meh and actually feels like something that makes a difference. And I will be putting another call out here. Go to the Daily AI Show community.com without the in there, the Daily AI Show community.com, and sign up for our Slack community so that you can get this prompting. I'll share, just like I did with the Gemini, I'll share both the direct link to the GPT builder if you just want to use what I built. And I will also share the actual back end prompting in case you want to make it better. And then if you do, then I fully expect you to share what you did to make it better with the rest of us. That's how this works. With that, I'll wrap it up for the week. This has been a lot of fun, guys. This whole week has been super fun. I feel like we're in our flow a little bit. I don't know if that's just the holiday vibes or whatever, but I really feel like the show is finding its flow, and it's been just super fun to be on with you guys all week. So more of that to come next week and the weeks after. Don't forget about the Conundrum episode. I told you it's a good one. It's kind of a sci-fi one. Did we send humans or AI as first contact with aliens? I promise you, you're going to enjoy that conversation. It's fun. And then the newsletter will go out on Sunday at 8 a.m. So if you want to be on that newsletter, then you need to go ahead and sign up before then. And you do that at our website, thedailyishow.com. Yes, Andy.
And shortly following the Conundrum episode, in some future week, we will put out a full feature-length film of the first contact with the aliens coming down. So, yeah,
yes.
looking forward to that.
Or if you do, let us know.
Yeah, because, right. Yeah, exactly.
Let's have a contest. Let's have people do just, let's not make them feature length, but let's just do a 10-minute film, about AI being delegated to go out and meet the like in Mars Attacks, right? Or in what was it, Contact or whatever?
Mars Attack. God,
you got 10 minutes to do the AI introduction of humanity to the alien race.
Up to 10 minutes, because some people may be able to get it done.
You might be able,
yeah.
Brevity is favored here. Yeah,
I feel like this is we're basically calling out Gareth in the comments, who makes really cool content and stuff like that. So very creative. All right, that's it for today. This week we will see you back again on Monday. Have a lovely weekend, everybody. See you on Monday.